My name is Ting Zhang, and I'm the founder and CEO of crayfish.io. We are based in Cambridge, my company, crayfish.io, and we are a digital platform facilitating cross-border trade with a focus on China. So today, we are going to have a discussion around how do you have an outstanding career in a multicultural environment. Now, just very quickly about ICANN, for those who have not know what ICANN is. So this is actually the first event in the name of ICANN since we launched it back just about a month ago with Lord Wei and a number of panelists when we had our first global networking event. So since then, we have a few hundreds joined the new community of ICANN. And what ICANN really aims to do is help you progress your career with the help of others in our community. And our community members are open not just to Chinese diaspora, but also those who speak Chinese, who love Chinese culture, and who can also actively participate in our community. Today, our speaker would be Qing and Johnny, and they will both give us introduction themselves. But very, very briefly, Qing Li is the only China-born British diplomat, and she had a long, successful public service career before she then left to set up her own educational group, which she can tell you a bit more later. Very successful in that as well. And Johnny Lu actually has a Chinese name, Lu Qingye. So Johnny has been in both private sector and public sector. And most recently, he also ran for the candidate for the parliament last year and achieved quite a lot of results as well. So it'd be great for us to hear both of them to share, and particularly they are actually coming from very different background. So let me first pass you to Qing. And so Qing, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Thank you, Ting. I'm not sure, my company in the UK, QED, is qualified to be successful because it's still at very early stage. Like many people in ICANN community that we're trying to support. QED is also a very young company, but certainly. I had a lot of fun creating QED, running QED, and working with QED people now. To start with, it was just myself. As you can imagine, leaving a department of thousands of people working together to yourself sitting in your house, that can be quite worrying situation. But here we go. We're still here, given all the challenges in 2020. So thank you again, Ting, for the kind introduction and for the kind invitation for me to speak and share my what is worth experience in the UK. Living in the UK 30 years, working more than 2/3 of that 30 years. This, however, is the first event where I feel that I am one of the last generations. So thank you, Johnny, too. Ting and I, just very briefly, have known each other for some 20 years. She came to my office to talk about her support, her wonderful work to UK companies doing business in China. And that was during my first week or first month, couldn't quite remember accurately, in then called Trade Partners UK. If someone in the audience is as old as I am, probably do remember that is the predecessor of now Department for International Trade.
That was 2006, I think.
What was it? Okay, yeah. That is nearly 20 years then. Here we go. Tim was, to me, Tim was the most attractive, no, sorry, active and also attractive, of course, and knowledgeable business consultants in this China UK trade sphere. Because for somebody like myself who's studied and lived in the UK since I was 19, I had very little idea about although I am Chinese, I certainly 100% ethnic Chinese, born in China, raised in China. But I had, because of my kind of higher education background, as well as work backgrounds, were all in the UK. So I had very little idea about commercial and economical behaviors and developments in China and what that really means to UK business. I truly, at that time, admired Ting's insights backed by her solid commercial M&A background. So I think Ting continued to do wonderful things. Commercial or not commercial, setting up ICANN community, it's so much needed initiative. So I'm very honored to be part of this Ting's new initiative. I think it's very challenging to try to wrap up my career development past within 5 minutes, but I will give it a go. And I hope what I'm sharing is useful and can, stir up some discussions, some thoughts, some useful hints going forward for your own career development here in the UK or in China or, another corner of this world. So I came to UK to start my pre-university foundation course. So I went into a very unique setup in Golders Green in Hampstead, an international department of a girls' school, which was very unique when I realized where everybody else was. And I thought, oh my God, my school fee is so high. Because I was paying really high school fees. So as a student, I had to work part-time. So I think my sort of working allowance at the time as a student was between 15 and 20 hours each week. So I did all kinds of part-time jobs, from babysitter, travel operator, gallery curator as well. So I brought some Chinese artists into London galleries before I start my sort of proper career in civil servants. And why I started, why I, after I'd done all those jobs, finished my study, why I decided to look for something else. I was, as everybody was looking for a sort of mainstream business, I was absolutely looking for everything, not just civil servants. I didn't have my mind. I didn't think it was possible. But as it happened, Johnny will be able to correct me maybe on timing. When Tony Blair started to be the Prime Minister, he started a civil servants recruitment campaign. So I saw that. I saw big advertised on one of the local papers. I didn't know it was possible, so I thought that looks fun. That looks like, when we're in China, you often heard about 公务员招聘. It's like a big campaign. So everybody sits in a big, like a school hall, and then you've been given papers, tests, some IQ tests, some EQ tests, some writing tests, a bit like when you attend a big school 11 plus, 13 plus exams. So kind of, I'm quite familiar with that type of test environment. So I thought maybe this is something I want to try. I registered myself. I went for a couple of public tests, and I went for a couple of interviews. They all happened with different people at different venues. And then one day, a call. So that was 1998, I think. And that after a couple of months, it did take them that long to go through perhaps all the candidates and make the decision. And given it was campaign, they're recruiting more than usual number of people. So I got a call from HR departments, and this was Home Office. It wasn't Department for International Trade, and asked me, well, first of all, to tell me you are in. We want to make you an offer, and secondly, to ask me which department would you like to be. As you can imagine, I was completely shocked. I don't really know that ministry, and I don't know what type of jobs, because it was a campaign type of recruitment. So they're recruiting people first before they place them to a specific position. So that's quite unusual format compared with many other sort of job recruitments. Then I remember I said, I don't know, I probably more interested in commercial, in something to do with trading. So they said the closest we could get you into is a department called Commercial and Procurement Unit, CAPRU. And I said, yeah, that's cool. So went in, and I met most wonderful people there. People who always willing to help, always willing to offer their advice in terms of my career development. And I, of course, the grade I entered was quite low. I think was administrative position. Then, of course, I do have my dreams. I do have my ambition. I do want to move up in terms of my career development. So I sought for opportunities, training opportunities, of course, to start with. That's in the UK. That's where, one of the first steps you would make when you want to move up in your career ladder. And then I realized procurement is nothing I wanted to do. I just don't have the passion. And I'm such a person who has to follow my passion, who has to be driven by, passion and love and enthusiasm. Otherwise, I can't function. So I found the experience there was quite strange in the way that I love people. I loved the people I work with. We hang out in the pubs. We hang out, in St. James's Park for lunch. We were good friends. Most of them are, English ethnic people. So I didn't want to leave, and I didn't want to. Well, I didn't know where to go next, although I know there's no pathway for me in this job. Until one day, my department training officer, David, who from Indian family, was born and raised here in the UK. Wonderful David came to me and said, Chin, guess what? I found you a perfect job. You don't need to put yourself through the exams for procurement certificates. I know you find that boring. And I thought, wow, that is a perfect training officer, isn't it? Who can read people's mind and capabilities. So he threw this piece of job description in front of me, and that was the job for deputy heads for China units at then called Trade Partners UK. Again, went for number of interviews, and finally, yes, I got the job. Then I spent, how many years? I spent 17 years in that department, during which time I worked in China at British Embassy for 4 years, Guangzhou, British Consulate in Guangzhou for another 4 years. So altogether 8 years in China. It was during that 8 years I gradually become more familiar and closer to the culture I was born. And that may sound strange to you guys, because I'm again such a person who is a quick learner, quick adapter. I adapt environments, what's happening around me, rather quickly. So settling any strange environments rather quickly. But during that 8 years, I met again wonderful people, who most of them were in technology, some of them in education. It was, during many conversations I had with my now good friend, who owns school groups, education groups, I realized education is the area that I think UK can do more and adding more value to China. Is a perfect, to me, it was a perfect match. And a little bit more personal background, I was born to a pair of lecturers. My mom was a college teacher, my dad was a university lecturer. So I had this childhood dream. So I talked about dream before, though civil servants wasn't one of my dreams. But anyway, the life path directed me to there. So, gradually that dream just came back to me and became stronger and stronger up to 8 years later, when I about to leave China to come back to the UK department. I said to my my boss, Catherine, can you please find me a job in education within the department? Otherwise, I'm probably going to leave the department because I want it so much. I just want to deep dive into education industry. I didn't know exactly what, but I just know this is the sector I want to work with. So here we go. I came back for 2 years, and I was the deputy director for education for the department. But again, driven by this childhood dream, as well as madness, I think. Because certainly my parents thought I was getting mad when I told them I'm leaving the department. I'm leaving this. They call it 金饭碗, the golden ball. I'm going to, create my own education business. And my parents certainly thought I was losing the plot. But again, here we go. We survived. QED is now nearly 4 years old. Survived, continue to survive this COVID-19. But, I have to, I don't need to pretend every day is a happy day and a funny day. It's not. In fact, most of the days, probably 80-90% of days are worrying days. When you run your own business, you want to expand, there's so much to do. You got big dream to achieve, but deep down, you have to walk on this ground. You have to make some money. You have to survive yourself. Then we recruit. Now we have nearly 10 people. Do we have 10 people? Some people are on furlough now, but we have around about 10 people. 4 years ago, it was just me. So then when you have bigger team, bigger company, then you think, no, we have to do that. we have to do something greater and bigger, because there's no way we can stop now. So it's when I started 4 years ago, a good friend of mine said, being an entrepreneur is an endless path. So I would, if anybody's now thinking to become entrepreneur, to start your own business, think more carefully. But if you have, but if you have that dream, if you feel so real, this is something you have to do, then give it, give your life, give your 100%, give you more than 100%, give everything that you have. But until you're prepared to give, it's a tough path. So I'm kind of moved from tough path to a comfortable path, and then thoughts that's a bit boring and jump into a tough path. If you want a fun food knife, it's also challenging. I hope I kind of give you something that is appropriate. But I know we're going to ask questions, discussions later. So I'm just going to hand over to Ting.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I know it's difficult, Ching, to condense 30 years of working in a high-fly career and also your entrepreneur journey into 5 minutes. So it's fine. You had a bit more time, but we can catch up later in terms of questions, because you will run your networking and Q&A session as well. So people who have specifically more questions for you also can address that later. And I knew that, as we said, when we first met about 15 years ago in your office in Beijing, in the British embassy, you were very different from other civil servants. I have been,
I hope there's no other civil servants. My ex-colleagues are listening to this.
You're one of the few really very efficient and very actionable person. So anyway, now we can come back to you with more questions addressing some of the interesting things in your career and your reflection. Now I would like to bring Johnny in, and Johnny has a relatively much shorter career, but I know that Johnny has a very interesting also experience in his early life and as an immigrant to the UK, but also very international from very young age. So Johnny, and I pass over to you now.
Great. Well, firstly, thank you so much, Ting, for inviting me, and congratulations on the ICANN network. It sounds like a wonderful network. I'd love to be involved in that in the long term. And Ting, what a wonderful story. No doubt you'll be providing a lot of advice in this entire session. So to canter very quickly, in terms of my background, and there's a lot to say, but in terms of my background, I'm 30 years old. My dad actually grew up in Birmingham in the UK, but then moved to Hong Kong, and that's where I was born. And I lived in Hong Kong for just 1 month. And then I moved to Holland, to Germany, where I went to an international military school, and then to the UK since as a young age. So for a very long time, I've had a bit of an identity crisis. My mom's from Taiwan. I feel like a rich mix of different cultures and different countries. And the idea of changing countries was actually quite disruptive for me and my confidence throughout that time. I went to school in Bedford. Some of you guys know it's not far from London. And for a very long time, I was a very shy kid. I didn't really get into any cultures. I had few friends. I was very quiet, and it was very challenging for me, frankly. I was the only Chinese person in school, practically. And I felt that was really challenging. But then I found sport, and I started to do rowing. And that really helped me. I sucked at rowing. The first time I started row, I fell in the river. But it gave me confidence, because in sport, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter if you have rich connections or not. What matters is that you're focused, you work hard, and you're able to, in the case of rowing, row as fast as you can across the finish line. And I managed to get my first leadership position there as the captain. And that really helped shape my confidence. If you guys are bored afterwards, there is a YouTube video in 2008 of me rowing in the national championships, and we hit a strong wave and our boat sank, and in front of thousands of people. It's got 100,000 views online. And that really, but that was a real test, because my first serious, what I say, conflict and serious kind of challenge and resilience test. We even though we sank and we trained 4 hours a day, 6 days a week for that race, in 2009 we actually managed to win the national title. And I think I was the first British Chinese person to win a rowing title, so I'm very proud of that. But it came at a huge cost of sinking a boat and having to retrain really hard. After that, I went to university, and that was quite fun. But I went to Durham University up north, which was not a very diverse place, but a wonderful place. And I was going to be in finance, but in my final year at university, I volunteered to be a teacher. So I taught science. My degree was in natural sciences. And I realized when I was teaching in County Durham, where it was a very deprived area, that I really wanted to go into public service, because I could see the challenges that young people were facing. And again, I was the only Chinese guy around, like 100 miles, but it was fine. And I then went over and decided to join the civil service. So that's, I guess, where I dovetailed in. I joined the graduate program called the Fast Stream, and I first worked in the business department, and then I worked in UKTI, which I'm sure was a crossover, and now it's the Department for Trade. And I found that even though the civil service was a proponent for diversity, and I would say in the public sector, especially in London, they try very hard on diversity. Certainly in my cohort, there was a lot of diversity in terms of skin tone, but not in terms of thinking. That's what I would say. Almost every single person in my cohort went to Oxford or Cambridge. They all spoke the same way. They all had the same life experiences. They all had a very kind of elite way, this, in my view, ivory tower way of how we deliver policy. And there was lots of philosophical debates that would quote Latin, all these things, which I'm like, this is just not reality in my view. And I was always a disruptor. And that was surprising, because people, when I was in the interview process, they thought I was this kind of kind. Well, I am a kind person, but I was a kind of a steady as it goes person. But once I got in, my mom was a trade union leader, so I organized kind of rallies to increase our pay. I was a total troublemaker, and I did that for a couple of years. Then I took a risk. I actually left the civil service Fast Stream after 2 years, because I had the opportunity to run a national charity that was funded by the government called NACU, the National Association of College University Entrepreneurs, NACU. And again, like running an organization, very stressful. We had a lot of funding cuts during this time. This was 2014. But it really, and I had to let people go, and we had to survive. We were basically a charity that helped promote businesses, entrepreneurship for young people. I did that for a few years. It's still running now. It still exists. So I'm very proud of that. And I learned a lot about leadership then, especially as a young leader, managing staff, 10 to 30 people. Then the referendum happened, if you recall, the Brexit referendum in 2016. And I decided that I wanted to go back into government to help with some of the work. So I joined the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. And then I joined the Brexit department as a negotiator for 2+ years. So I wrote a chapter of the withdrawal agreement. I negotiated on things on fisheries. I was based in a building called the Ministry of Defense, and also in Downing Street, where I briefed ministers on a whole bunch of stuff. I was the only British Chinese person in my area, for sure. And it was really, really exciting, really challenging, very, very, very exhausting. But it was really cool to see politics firsthand. And then I decided that, I love the civil service, but as in the civil service, you have to be politically neutral. And at that time, the negotiation had run its course at a technical level, but not necessarily in a political level. This was under Theresa May. We were trying to get votes through Parliament, and it was stuck. And so I, again, took a risk. I left the civil service. I joined a large corporate called the Adecco Group, which was a good job. But I mainly did it because I wanted to be politically free. And then in 2019, I really focused on my political career, did lots of campaigning. And in September 2019, I was selected as a Conservative parliamentary candidate for Hampstead and Kilburn, which is in London. And it was one of the two, and we can talk about this later, but to become a parliamentary candidate for the governing party is not a straightforward exercise. It took me probably about 7 years to get to that stage, including going through a parliamentary assessment, interviews, writing essays, and all that stuff. And the final stage to be selected is to go into a hustings, where you go into the local party association, of which there was like 100 people. And I was the new guy. I was not from the area. I was against someone that was super handsome, local character, was a former candidate. And here's me, an ethnic minority Chinese guy. It was so scary. It was so scary. And of course, the audience was mainly not British Chinese, right? But I went in there and with no notes, and I just stood there and I gave my story. I just said, look, the truth is, I'm not going to be your perfect candidate, but I'll work really, really hard. I'll be articulate and I'll take the fight to our opposition parties. And I managed to win that hustings, which meant it gave me opportunity to run for parliament. A very tough election because it was a Labour stronghold, and we were predicted to come third behind the Lib Dems. It was a top Lib Dem target seat as well. The Lib Dems spent about £500,000 on our election. I spent about £2,000 on our election, but we did it. But we managed to keep second. I got nearly 14,000 votes because we ran a very strong social media campaign. And I effectively, threw everything in it, and it was really challenging. And again, something more I can talk about, and that's kind of where we are now. So after that, really good experience, and I'm hoping it will increase my chances for the next general election. In the meantime, I'm a comms advisor. I'm also a board director for CARVE, which is the Conservatives for Equality Against Racism, which is an important group to try and push one of the political parties to talk more about racism, to talk more about the British Chinese as well. And again, later on, I can talk more about the specific issues for the British Chinese community in terms of hate crime. And I'm also a governor for the University for the Creative Arts. Very, very excited about that, where we are an institution that really promotes practical learning. I sometimes feel that we focus so much on academic learning that we don't necessarily provide applicable skills to people in the real world. So that's my kind of long story. I'm really excited to hear more about it. I'm so passionate about trying to get more representation in Parliament, but also in the media, in the local elections for mayors. And I see talent coming all the time. But what we need to do is to help each other to make sure that our voices are heard. That is an ongoing journey. And I am standing on the foothills of other leaders, like people here in this call, who have already done the hard work of trying to get the society to accept us as individuals and as a community. So just continuing that path. Thank you.
That's really an amazing story as well, Johnny, because I haven't known you as long as Jing. So some of this in the story is new to me. For example, winning the national rowing champion and sinking a boat. That was quite a big thing. And I can see that actually, although you both coming from very different background, and different generation, I would say, and different gender and everything couldn't be more different, except you're both the same thing is you're both ethnically Chinese. You look totally Chinese. But I thought one of the things I can pick up, the common thing is you are both a risk taker. And you like to take risks and challenge yourselves all the time. You're never comfortable with one thing and just stay there. That's one. And second, I can see that is that you both are passionate about what you do. And I think that's the one single most important factors from what I can see that make you the person you are. And I know there are other people coming questions in, but I want to throw one questions of my own first. I don't think we have time for many questions from me, but I'd like to ask one thing to both of you, maybe to Chin first, is in your public service and your private, and now you're an entrepreneur, what are the common traits and the important factors that you think that could be helpful to others to be successful? Qing, you're muted.
Sorry, I just realized.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ting. What a wonderful story, Johnny. Very inspiring. My daughter does rowing as well, and I hope one day she'll be able to compete for the country.
I'm sure she's much faster than me.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm not sure, but she is very sporty. So I think the most sort of valuable thing, or the one thing in common, it had to be yourself as a person. You know, I always say, I think a team well sported. I was thinking the same when Johnny was talking about he taking risks, a number of risks in his young life. But I always think life is a journey, and that journey is, you know, it's an adventure. So if you don't want to take, if you don't want to be adventurer, then it's also okay. But I just think I am that kind of person who will be super bored if I'm sitting just on one type of vehicle going forward. I like to see what other vehicles look like. I like to see how fast or how slow I can drive, and you know, all that kind of personal feeling. So one of the good things I have certainly learned, also all our public service has taught me, is invest in people. So that doesn't mean, you know, you have to pay them higher salary. It doesn't mean you have to take them to luxury hotel for lunches. But it does mean that people drives successful business. You know, any business. Government is a business too. It's an organization. Any successful organization need people on the same boat. So that's the, you know, that's the one thing I have learned, and that's the one thing I'm now enforcing in my own company as well. And of course, another wonderful skills, you know, skills like thinking big, strategic thinking, team working, problem solving, delivering results. All those skills, common skills, can be applied in any business structure, any business setup. I think as the leader, one thing you have certainly do for yourself is to learn new things quickly. That's that, you know, keep yourself on top of everything. You may not be on top of everything at the beginning, but always try to move and understand the situation quickly and move yourself to the top. So you can see better. You can see all the angles and the corners and make the best and the fairest judgments that, you know, that whatever issue deserves. So I think, yeah, a lot of, you know, resilience, a lot of skills, sort of common skills. It doesn't matter which job you're doing. It's being yourself and respect yourself and respect others.
That's great. So Johnny, could you add to that?
Yeah, so in terms of kind of the differences about my experience in public and private organizations, I think the main difference is more about kind of your stage in your journey, your career journey. Certainly when I first started my career, I felt a lot of pressure to try and fit in with the culture. And I don't know about you guys, but I just don't enjoy drinking beer in a pub. But it's a really big deal, especially in Westminster, in politics, policy. And every Thursday, Friday, they'll go out on the lads' night and they'll drink. And so for me, like, I've spent my whole day working with you guys. Why would I spend the whole evening with you guys here, right? I want to now go see my other friends, or I want to go to Chinatown and have my bubble tea, right? I don't really want to drink beer because I get really red. And it's just that kind of culture. And so certainly in the first half of my journey, I felt very pressured to do that. And I didn't really enjoy it. And people can tell I didn't enjoy it. But now that I know a little bit more about myself as what in terms of what I like to do, I'm very much more confident in being able to push those kind of things away. And it hasn't really at all affected my career. The other thing that has changed, and I see more in the private sector, especially if you advise or work in a smaller entrepreneurial network, is that you get all sorts of different people, especially different managers and leadership styles. And my tolerance for BS has really gone down as I get older. And I'm sure all the more veterans here are nodding, where you can see the rubbish that people say sometimes, or you see a culture which isn't necessarily acceptable or not inclusive. And I feel it's so important to call those things out, especially if you see a senior manager not necessarily following good practices that affects the younger, more inexperienced colleagues as well. If I see something that's uncomfortable, I will take them to another room and explain why that's an issue. And I look, in the beginning of the year, I'll be honest, I took a contract, and I was super lucrative contract, but I witnessed some really nasty interpersonal relationships between two colleagues. And I had to leave the organization because I just do not think that's acceptable. And I think if you have the kind of integrity in your career, people come to you for opportunities, because we need more of that. And it's not really necessary whether I'm British, Chinese or not. It's really about being, if you're a kind person, and if you work hard but you care about people, and as Chin said, it's about talent development and loving your colleagues, and things turn out pretty good. And that applies to both the public, the private sector. I think the larger organizations tend to have better processes. Small organizations, especially those who may be backed by VCs from America, and there's this kind of aggressive style of growth, there's a lot of challenges alongside that. And I found that more challenging than working in the public sector. That's my 2 comments.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because what you are experiencing now, I think is quite different from what Qing experienced when she first joined the public sector. But when you also, I think something you mentioned that is very interesting, because something that probably bothers a lot of Chinese first generation immigrants is, do you need to fit in? Do you have to fit in, or is it okay not to fit in? Is it always most important to do the right thing, or do you want to appear to be the kind of team player all the time? So that's something I think it's very difficult to generalize, but it leaves a lot more thinking for us on that. There's now I would like to open the questions to the audience. I think we are going to just run a few more minutes discussion before we go to the breakout rooms, because there's more questions. So from Alice Huang from PwC, he said that's really inspirational stories. I do feel everyone working here have to go through the process of fighting to be seen and fighting to be heard and taken seriously. Any advice in doing so? Maybe we need a good session on personal branding. So on those, would you like to go first?
Can I just say, it was really interesting hearing Johnny said, I want bubble tea, I don't want beer. It is a very personal thing, isn't it? I always encourage, now in education, I encourage our students to follow your heart, to follow your dream. Everybody has a dream. So, go through it. It's not easy, but do not give up. Me, on the other hand, I really enjoy hanging out in the pubs. I really enjoy, having a pint on what we call New Friday. I don't know, Johnny, you're probably too young to understand what New Friday was. It was created for Thursday drinking after work. So Friday wasn't enough, so we added in another day. So I again, that's why I said, you know, you got to know what you want as a person. Do you want fitting? If I don't want fitting, I walk out. Because do I want to make change? Am I qualified to make this change? Where shall I make change? Where shall I start? Whom shall I start with? And all those questions, if you ask yourself will give you the true answer. And follow that answer. If it's something too big you can't deal with, then you have to seek support. If there's something, I often, when I landed in then called Trade Partners UK, actually UKTI is an organization between TP UK and DIT today. So I had two staff members assigned and report to me, and one of them, and we have this annual staff appraisal, which I actually adapted and implemented in my own business today. Even though we're a small team, we still have this line management and a staff appraiser to encourage people to look at the areas that I have done really well and the areas I haven't. So one of the comments from one of those staff was, we really like your management style because you always put us into a sort of a human aspects, from that angle to make the right humanly, he call it, judgment and decision. So I do think let culture and our family background become a value rather than burden, and always ask yourself questions.
That's really good. That's really good advice. I think it's seen our cultural heritage as a value rather than sometimes a liability. Johnny, do you have something to say on that?
Yeah. So in terms of kind of like fighting to be seen, I am 100% on you on that. We have always been, for me anyway, seen as an invisible minority, and I find that really frustrating. And you got to call it out. But here's some specific things that I think might be relevant in terms of building your brand. So for me, for my example, I knew that I needed to build a national narrative about who I was as a person. So then that's where your story comes from, the fact that I moved from different countries, etc. But then also to be very specific when you're trying to hit a particular point. So for example, if you want to apply for a job, you should both have the narrative of what drives you, but also like, oh, I've hit X amount of turnover, or I've employed X amount of staff, because I feel like numbers and data can really anchor a point. So you need to have a double wrapping there. The second is that I find that communications is so important. Speechcraft, especially in politics, but also actually in most businesses, is one of the most important points. You will not like remember 90% of what I'm saying, but you will remember my energy, right? And that's what counts when you're trying to make an important impression, whether it's for an interview, whether it's for a pitch, whether it's for building your social media profile. On social media, a lot of people ask me about social media and if it's important or not. It's important if you know your target audience and what you're trying to achieve. So for me, I focus very hard on Twitter because that's where all the political journalists are. So I build lots of Twitter content. I built a strong relationship with other MPs online, and I made a few of the videos that I created went viral with hundreds of thousands of views. And that built my map because I focused very clearly on the algorithm and I was quite specific. The final part is about your style. And a lot of conservative MPs have the suit, the tie, they have excellent haircuts, and I was a mess. If you watch some of my campaign, I'm a total mess. But that's okay, because what I'm showing is being genuine. I'm really me. I'm maybe showing vulnerability. But most of all, it needs to feel easy. Because if you want to build a profile as a community, it can't feel hard. That's why working on something that you're passionate about really helps, because this is a long-term journey. And if it feels unnatural, you're going to quit after a few months or days or whatever. And that's same with building a startup, building any businesses. You got to love what you're doing. And it can't feel, it will be challenging at times, but it needs to feel like you got a drive to continue to do it every day. So if you do that, and of course join ICANN as a network, then I think overall, we'll build that profile, and then things will happen in a better way than before.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Actually, you just talk about ICANN. So first, I would like to show you what we are having in the next months or so. Is we will have every month, roughly, this will be similar. We will have a new my session that I will interviewing 1 or 2 people in depth and about the experience. So this will be, we're giving a name by one of our advisors called I Can Talk with Ting, which I quite like. And then we'll have still monthly discussions. This may be chaired by me or some of our community members who would like to specifically focusing on a hot topic or sector. And we will have also free career coaching sessions by experienced bilingual coach. This will be coming soon. Watch that space. And all the events will be exclusive for ICANN members or some selected partners members, but mainly by ICANN members. So do join us now. You can use the QR code on the left. On the right, that is a LinkedIn code as well.